Imagine an airport where hundreds of cameras monitor every second, where every car, every bag, and every person is inspected. And from that very place, if someone makes $20 million worth of gold, nearly 120 crore rupees, disappear without firing a single bullet or hurting anyone, what would you think? This is the story of Canada's biggest and most mysterious gold heist, Toronto Pearson International Airport, April 2023, a case that made security agencies around the world question everything. That day, everything seemed absolutely normal. Flights were coming and going. Cargo was being loaded in the cargo section. Security guards were completing their shifts. But amidst those ordinary moments, something happened that remained a mystery for months. A cargo van arrived. It had all the required documents, airline-stamped papers proving it had come to pick up a gold shipment. The staff suspected nothing. Everything went exactly as it did every day. The gold was loaded. Signatures were made on the papers, and the van drove away. A few hours later, when the real company's truck arrived to collect the gold, they were told the shipment had already been handed over. Everyone's faces turned pale. The system was checked again. CCTV footage was reviewed. But there was no trace of that van. No gunshots, no alarms, yet 400 kilograms of gold had vanished into thin air. For the police, it was nothing short of a nightmare. Because if such a valuable consignment could vanish from the country's most secure airport, was any place truly safe? Now let's go back a few hours before that day, when the gold began its journey. The gold had arrived from Switzerland, one of the world's most trusted gold markets, totaling 400 kilograms. It's worth $20 million. It was to be delivered to Toronto Pearson International Airport, from where it would be sent to banks and jewelry companies. Every brick was sealed. Each box had a unique code. All documents were prepared. Customs clearance, insurance, tracking numbers, everything legal and secure. It was the same process that happened thousands of times every day. But someone must have identified the weak link hidden in that routine. Air Canada Cargo Terminal, the largest and busiest airport terminal in Canada. Every day, hundreds of cargo flights land there. Some carry valuable goods, gold, foreign currency, or government document. The Air Canada Cargo Terminal is considered one of the most secure places in the country. Cargo is monitored 24 hours a day. Every container's movement is tracked. When it arrived, who signed for it, and to whom it was handed over. Every step is recorded. But in this entire process, one thing is trusted above all: paperwork. At the airport, every item loaded or unloaded is based on an authorization form or airway bill. If the documents are correct, no questions are asked, because the foundation of the system is built on trust. But one day someone turned that very trust into a weapon. On the morning of April 17, 2023, the gold shipment from Switzerland safely arrived at the Air Canada Cargo Terminal. It was placed under customs supervision and temporarily stored in a vault until the authorized transport company could collect it. The vault had a temperature control system, dual locks, card access control at every door, armed guards outside and cameras inside. Security so tight that not even a bird could slip through. But the story begins right there, where people believe nothing can go wrong. Because the biggest mistakes often happen when we're convinced everything is under control. That day, someone defeated the entire system with nothing but paperwork. No gunfire, no broken locks, just ink and stamps. Canada's biggest gold heist had been planned, and those documents, which were supposed to represent trust, had now become the most dangerous weapon in the story. It was morning, April 17, 2023. Toronto Pearson Airport was as busy as ever. Planes were landing on the runway. Ground staff wearing headsets were talking to each other. The cargo section echoed with the sound of machines. Everything seemed routine, just like any other day at a major airport. Inside the Air Canada Cargo Terminal, the staff were busy. The morning shift had checked in. Security guards were at their posts. Containers were being inspected. That day, a special shipment was to be dispatched. The 400 kilograms of gold that had arrived from Switzerland just hours earlier. It had been taken out of the vault and was waiting to be handed over to the Brinks security truck after completing all paperwork. But the Brinks truck hadn't arrived yet. Around 10:30 a.m., a white cargo van slowly approached the terminal gate. The driver wore a uniform and 2 more people sat beside him. The van had the name of a logistics company printed in large letters on its side, a name that was commonly seen around the airport, so no one found it suspicious. The van stopped at the gate. The guard asked for documents as a formality. The driver smiled and handed over a file. All the papers were neat, bearing Air Canada's official seal. The signatures were in the right places. The delivery number matched the one in the system. The guard glanced through the file, nodded and opened the gate. The van drove in. It was the same shipment scheduled for pickup at 10. Signatures were made. The staff kept copies of the documents. The gold crates were brought to the loading area, 6 pallets, each containing heavy gleaming metal cases. Every case had a serial number. But at that moment no one realized those numbers were about to disappear forever. By around 11 hours a.m. the loading was complete. The driver placed the remaining documents in the file, closed the van's door, and slowly began driving out. Everything looked perfectly normal. No one even turned to look back. But just minutes later, when the van was supposed to exit through the customs route, it suddenly took another road, heading straight toward the gate that led to the city streets. There was a security checkpoint there, but the guard's attention was on another truck. The van simply turned on its lights, honked softly, and drove out, as if it were routine business. No noise, no panic, and within seconds, that white van had crossed the airport boundary. After that, there was only silence. Evening came. Toronto Pearson Airport's cargo terminal was as busy as always. Large trolleys, air freight containers, and security officers, everything looked normal. But the shipment that had left just hours earlier was now worth enough to shake all of Canada. Around 6 that evening, the Brinks Company truck arrived at the Air Canada cargo terminal. Their job was to collect the gold shipment from Switzerland and deliver it safely to the bank vault. But when the Brinks staff went inside and asked for the records, the officials present said, the shipment was already picked up. At first the Brinks employees thought it must be a misunderstanding. They showed their documents, serial numbers, timestamps, everything was perfect. But in Air Canada's records, it was clearly written, shipment already released. For a few seconds, silence filled the room. Then that silence slowly turned into fear. Who took it? When was it taken? With whose permission? A flood of questions began. Inside the terminal, chaos broke out. The security supervisor immediately ordered the CCTV footage to be checked, and the moment they saw it, everyone's faces turned pale. In the footage, a white van could be seen, carrying a sticker that looked like an airport permit. It drove inside. The driver showed some papers. The guard opened the gate. And within minutes, that same van drove out carrying 6 large pallets, without any interruption. The timestamp showed 2:32 p.m., which meant that the gold had already vanished nearly 3.5 hours before the Brinks truck arrived. Police were called immediately. Peel regional police teams rushed to the airport. The entire cargo terminal was sealed. Every entry and exit gate was checked. Every staff member was questioned. Who signed, who saw the van, who checked the documents. But the most shocking part was that all the records looked perfectly legitimate. Shipment release orders, cargo transfer papers, authorization letters, everything was in official format. Even the digital signatures of staff members were present on them. That meant there was someone who knew the internal process in detail, which paper is signed at what time, which form passes through which department, and which team is posted at which gate. By evening, the news had reached the media. Breaking news flashed across every screen. $20 million worth of gold missing from Toronto Airport. All of Canada was shaken. On Twitter, people were asking questions. Was this an inside job? News anchors shouted, gold stolen from the country's most secure airport. Who is this invisible thief? An Air Canada spokesperson said in a press conference, we are fully cooperating with law enforcement. This is an isolated incident. But the public didn't believe it was isolated. On social media, people began to mock, saying, if it's so easy to steal gold from the airport, then why do our suitcases always go missing? But for the police, this was no joke. The Peel police chief told the media, we don't have any suspects yet. No clear lead. But this looks like a highly coordinated operation. Meanwhile, pressure was building on the Canadian government. Opposition leaders questioned, If gold can be stolen from a high-security zone like Pearson, then who is safe in the rest of the country? The police investigation was now moving fast. Losing such a large quantity of gold from Toronto Pearson Airport was no ordinary event. Peel Regional Police immediately formed a special task force composed of the country's most experienced investigators, forensic experts, and internal security analysts. Their first step was to review every second of CCTV footage. Recordings from more than 200 airport cameras were extracted. Every angle, every movement, every vehicle's entry and exit was analyzed frame by frame. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. The white van that entered looked exactly like an authorized Air Canada cargo van. Not only its color and number plate, but even its branding decals were an exact match. The forensic team zoomed into the footage. The license plate looked genuine. But a technical scan revealed it was a printed overlay, meaning a fake plate had been pasted over the real one. Now the police began to understand that this operation had been planned with extreme precision. There was someone who not only knew the airport's security system, but also knew exactly when and which shipment was scheduled to arrive. The investigation team started by questioning the cargo terminal staff, the security check officers, and Air Canada's internal logistics personnel. Everyone was asked the same questions. Did you see that van? Did you speak to the driver? Did you verify the documents? Most replied, everything looked normal. The papers seemed genuine. The driver was confident, and no one in the system raised any red flag. Then the forensic experts examined copies of the documents that the van driver had shown at the entry gate. And that's when the first major shock came. The documents looked so real that even trained officers were fooled. Logos, barcodes, cargo serial numbers, even official scanned signatures, everything looked identical to genuine shipment papers. But when the QR codes were verified in the database, it was found that the entry numbers belonged to an old shipment that had taken place weeks earlier. This meant the theft hadn't been done with weapons, it was done with paper. Now the task force began working on the theory of an inside job. Because such precise information could only come from someone on the inside. Air Canada's internal network logs were checked. Who accessed the shipment data? Which employees logged in that day? From which systems were the documents printed? But surprisingly, there was no sign of unauthorized access. Everything looked completely routine. Now suspicion shifted. Maybe someone inside had been bought off. Perhaps for a few $1,000s, a clerk sold the details, shipment arrival time, pallet information, document format, everything. Peel Police sought help from intelligence agency. RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police, joined the investigation. Gradually new names surfaced, organized crime groups from Ontario and Montreal, known for luxury car thefts, jewelry robberies and smuggling operations. Some of their old members became suspects, but there was no solid evidence. Every time the police found a lead, it turned into a dead end. In one case, police raided a warehouse in Montreal where suspicious gold melting equipment was found. The team hoped that maybe the stolen gold had been melted there. But when forensic tests were done, it turned out to be just scrap metal. In another case, police rounded up a trucking company in Ontario because one of their old van models matched the one seen in the footage. But their GPS records were clean, no unusual activity. Every clue disappeared into the fog. No solid witnesses, no direct trail, and most importantly, no ransom demand or black market transaction. The police had answers to every question, except one: the truth. Media pressure kept mounting. Every channel had experts presenting theories. Some said it was the work of an international smuggling ring. Others said, could it be an insurance fraud? But police documents showed the shipment was genuine, and even the insurance claim was authentic. Still, week after week, there was no breakthrough. A member of the task force later said, we examined every CCTV camera, every car, every witness, but whoever planned this had thought of everything in advance. Sometimes the greatest crime isn't the one that's committed, it's the one erased so perfectly that it looks like it never happened. Toronto's gold heist had now become a riddle. No suspects, no evidence, no recovery, and then the police decided to take a new path. Instead of looking backward, they started looking forward. If the stolen gold had gone somewhere, where was it being used now? That thought would lead the investigation in a new direction. Because now, the clues wouldn't be found in the air, but in the trail of money. But that path wasn't going to be easy, because the person who planned this masterpiece had erased every trace, as if they had never set foot there at all. And that was exactly why the media headlines were screaming the next day. Every clue had turned into just another dead end. The police investigation had now centered on who. The answers to how and when had been found. But the biggest question still remained. Who did it? Toronto's gold heist had not only shaken law enforcement, but had stunned the entire world. 400 kilograms of gold, worth nearly $20 million had vanished without a trace. And now everyone's mind was haunted by one question. Where did all that gold go? The investigation team began focusing on the most likely paths of the stolen gold. Because the real question was, how is gold sold or hidden after being stolen? Crime experts explained that in gold heists, the most common method is melting and laundering. That means the stolen gold is melted down within hours and turned into small gold biscuits, or jewelry. Once its original purity and hallmark are erased, tracing it becomes nearly impossible. Such things had happened before in Canada. In the 1990s, there was a gold refinery theft in Montreal where about 150 kilograms of gold disappeared, and months later part of it was found in the black markets of Dubai and South Africa. Police analysts compared the Pearson heist to the Rand refinery case in South Africa, where inside employees colluded to change the shipment route and make the gold vanish. The pattern was the same in both: no gunfire, no chaos. Just a game of documentation. Experts said this wasn't the work of a local gang. It was a well-coordinated logistics operation. That meant people were involved who knew exactly how to manipulate the system, which security loopholes could be exploited, and during which timing window the operation could be executed. A Peel police report later revealed that, just days before the theft, several new contractual workers had been hired in the airport cargo handling division. Some of them left the job within a few weeks, and one of their phone numbers was later found connected to a smuggling network in Montreal. As soon as this detail surfaced, suspicion within the investigation team deepened even more. Could it be that someone had leaked the Brinks Security or Air Canada cargo schedule? Because if someone knew exactly when the shipment would arrive, which truck would pick it up and which officer would sign off, then that person could very well have opened the door for the real mastermind. Gradually, suspicion reached the customs officials too. A van that large leaving the airport without secondary checks could only be possible if someone had approved gate-level clearance. But when the digital logs were checked, every entry was valid. That meant someone inside the system had created authorized access, just for a few minutes, and then erased it. The mastermind wasn't outside the system, he was inside it. Meanwhile, the public had become completely fascinated by this case. On social media, memes like "Gold Gone Wild" were trending. On TV debates, every expert had their own theory. Some said it was the work of the Russian mafia. Others claimed Dubai's gold traders were involved. Late-night talk shows started calling this theft Canada's Ocean's 11. The police, who were quietly investigating, were now taking help from international intelligence agencies. Interpol was alerted. If any suspicious gold consignment of unusual purity or quantity crossed a border, it should be reported immediately. RCMP also launched a secret operation. Undercover officers were sent to make contact with black market gold buyers. For months, they monitored jewelry dealers in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. Several small hints surfaced. A few suspicious transactions were caught too, but no direct link could be traced back to that April 17th shipment. They say finding a mastermind isn't easy, because he's like a shadow unseen until his plan is complete. Everyone was searching for him. The police, the media, even gold traders around the world. But he was nowhere to be found. Because he hadn't hidden himself, he had made the system itself his disguise. The Toronto Pearson gold heist had now become more than just a crime. It had become a masterclass in modern logistics crime, where no bullets were fired, only paperwork did the job. Where there was no robbery in the traditional sense, just the exploitation of trust. And as the weeks passed, the police realized this wasn't just a heist, but a perfectly calculated game where every move had been thought out in advance, and every pawn had already been bought. Now only one question remained. Would this crime ever be solved? Or would it become one of those mysteries history never reveals? Almost a year had passed. The Toronto Pearson gold heist was no longer just an unsolved mystery. It had become the biggest enigma in Canada's history. The police had watched hundreds of hours of footage, They had questioned hundreds of people, but there was still no sign of the gold. People began to believe that maybe this case would never be solved. But then in April 2024, everything changed. Peel Regional Police called a press conference. The room was packed with media reporters, cameras were on, microphones ready, and the police chief stood in front, holding a thick file in his hand. His very first words shook the entire country. "We have arrested 9 people in connection with the Toronto Pearson gold heist." The room fell silent. Among the arrested were a former Air Canada employee, a trucking company owner, 2 customs clearance agents, and the rest were people connected to local logistics networks. The police explained that after months of investigation, they had finally pieced together the scattered digital breadcrumbs, old document prints, van GPS data, and a suspicious IP address that had tampered with the shipment logs. All of these led them to one man, Amandeep Singh, a name that had never come up in the investigation before. A man who once worked at Air Canada's cargo terminal. Police found that Amandeep had planned this theft months in advance. He had prepared fake airway bills, duplicate cargo tracking sheets, and dummy delivery slips identical to Air Canada's official format. He had arranged jobs for some trusted people inside the cargo handling department, and when the right time came, he entered the airport in a fake van. The system recognized it as an authorized pickup, and no one questioned it. After the theft, the gold was taken to a nearby warehouse, where they tried to melt it down to erase any trace. When police reached the location, they found melting equipment, furnaces, and gold refining tools. They also seized several luxury cars, cash and weapons. But the gold itself was still missing. No plates, no bricks, only the place remained where once 400 kilograms of gold had been kept. During the press conference, police revealed that Amandeep Singh was now on the run. He had left Canada just weeks after the theft, and was last seen boarding a flight to Dubai. Interpol issued a red notice for him, but there was still no trace. The police chief looked into the cameras and said, "This was not a spontaneous crime. It was a carefully planned theft of opportunity." The suspects exploited procedural trust and turned the system's paperwork against itself. Those who built the system on the trust of paperwork were defeated by paperwork itself. After months of hard work and thousands of hours of investigation, the entire network of the mastermind was finally exposed. But the truth remained: the gold was still missing. Police were certain that it had been melted down and sold on the black market, or sent to a country where it could never be traced again. People in Canada still asked, "Will that gold ever be found?" And the police had no answer. Because the day Amandeep planned this heist, he had already decided he would steal the gold, but leave no evidence behind. Canada's biggest gold theft was solved, but the gold was still missing. Toronto Pearson Airport remained as busy as ever, as if nothing had ever happened. The sound of planes on the runway, the bustle of ground staff, and the constant hum of cargo machinery continued like routine. But every corner still carried the silence that had fallen after the evening of April. There were high-tech surveillance cameras, biometric access, and elite security teams. But despite such sophisticated systems, one man's cunning and greed had fooled them all. 400 kilograms of gold, worth millions, disappeared in just a few minutes, and the system could only watch. Sometimes the biggest theft doesn't happen from a vault, it happens from trust. The gold was still untraceable. Interpol, Peel Police, and the RCMP followed international trails. In Dubai, Switzerland, South Africa, warehouses were searched everywhere. But every time, only empty spaces, melting tools and old footprints were found. After months of investigation, and 99 arrests, the true mastermind, Amandeep Singh, was still missing. He had deceived not only the system and the gold, but also trust itself. Public fascination didn't fade either. People were still making memes on social media. Experts were still debating on talk shows. Some said it was Canada's Ocean's 11 moment. Others said, a theft so big and so clean seemed impossible. This heist wasn't just about money. It was a mental game where the mastermind thought, planned, and trapped the system within its own rules. The gold might have melted somewhere else by now. Maybe it had turned into jewelry, or reached some black market buyer. But its real form was never found. Still, the Toronto Pearson heist will forever remain a reminder that sometimes the greatest theft doesn't happen in vaults, but in trust. The background score slowly fades out. Text appears on the screen. This was Canada's most daring theft, the Toronto Pearson gold heist, and thus, it remained a mystery, one that would forever be remembered, not just in Canada's history, but in the records of the world's greatest gold heist.